kept sending the clowns, right? That's the Steelers' way this offseason, it feels like.
Welcome to All Four Quarters, your one-stop shop for news and reactions to all things NFL. This week we're looking at the AFC North, which, following his recent signing, is ready for a good Rodger. Today we got Connor here, we got Ronan.
Hello.
And we got Sean.
Hello.
Thank you very much, Ronan, for that fantastic intro. How are we getting on, lads? How's tricks?
Yeah, the last few minutes have been great. Yeah, we listened to Ronan come up with jokes, so it's been a good interval. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good, nice. Get the mind clear, get ourselves ready to rock. You know. I presume things are much the same down in Cork as they were in the previous episode.
The dog downstairs is barking at the neighbours, which is the biggest development that's happened in the last.
Oh, very good. Well, you can't trust those neighbours, though. Dodgy boys. Yeah, I'm sure my fella's probably going to go off at some point. My wife will be returning from her run shortly, and Loki likes to alert us to anyone coming to the house. So, yeah, I'm sure I'll hear that shortly. So this week we're going to look at the AFC North. I think a little bit of a different vibe than what we were getting from the AFC East, given, we've got two teams here that view themselves definitely in the hunt for the big game for the Super Bowl. We got one that's a perennial playoff contender that's had a lot of change, and we've got one that has been bottom feeder for a bit, but at least seems to have turned the page on one of its darkest chapters of late. So it should make for an interesting one. I suppose we'll just kick straight into it then, Sean. We've got the Bengals up first, and you're going to tell us all about them. They went 9-8 last year, Sean.
Yeah, the Bengals, that wonderful, romantic, mysterious team that everyone wants to succeed but never actually hopes that they'll get it done. Last year, 9-8, where they tried to answer that perennial question of, can a team win without a defense? And the question is, well, with Joe Burrow, you can win a few games, but don't expect to be making the playoffs. And so this year, they're going to try and actually have a defense. But it depends how many players actually turn up for camp and how many players want to play. So the big changes in at DC, Al Golden, Notre Dame, did that rare achievement of creating a good college defense, but largely unproven in the NFL. So an interesting change of pace. Players-wise, Shemar Stewart, the rookie, has been brought in, although will we actually see him on the field and when is another question. Also, TJ Slayton on the defensive line, Oren Burks at linebacker, and two rookies at linebacker, Demetrius Knight and Barrett Carter. On the offensive line, Lucas Patrick, Dylan Fairchild, a rookie, Jalen Rivers, a rookie, Samaje Perine, and Taj Brooks, the rookie, out. Lou Anarumo, who had moments of defensive brilliance, but you do kind of need to not give up 30 points a game, is out at DC. Defensive line out, Sam Hubbard, Shamel Rankins, Jay Tufele. On the linebacker, Jermaine Pratt's gone, Akeem Davis-Gettier, Mike Hilton, and Von Bell on the back end. The constant churning of the Bengals secondary is one of the more weird aspects of this team. On the offensive line, gone Trent Brown, Alex Kappa, Khalil Herbert. So they have Joe Burrow, generational talent at quarterback. This era's Joe Montana, who has brought this team to a Super Bowl. They've got Ja'Marr Chase, the wide receiver one, maybe the second best receiver in the league after Justin Jefferson when he's on his day. They got a really, really good WR2, T. Higgins, who would be a WR1 in a lot of other places. They've still got a weak O-line, the perennial Bengals problem. Even when they spend a lot of money, as they've done the last 3 or 4 years, they don't necessarily end up with a good place. And now they're leaning a little bit on rookies and unproven talents in certain places there. On the defensive side, Trey Hendrickson is the star, but he doesn't want to play for them anymore. And the rest of them are bits and pieces of kind of middling talents or people like Cam Taylor-Britt who looked maybe that they could have been better than they have turned out to be. So this team really hinges on, can the offense keep producing? can the offense essentially outscore the other team, and can they create a defense that at least gives their offense a chance? Because I think if this team, and I think the 2021 Super Bowl run really taught us this. If this Bengals team actually just creates not a good defense, but a middle of the road, decent defense that is able to compete at the highest level and not give up too many points, then Joe Burrow will do the rest, right? You give this offense a chance, this team can win it all. And the question that's been running around for the past few years is have they given this team a chance? And has the coaching aspect of it as well, the perennial Zach Taylor question of is he a good coach or not? Have they given Burrow a chance on that end? Because there is maybe sort of the Buffalo Bills worry here, is that the Bengals being the Bungles, threaten to waste a generational talent. If in 10, 15 years we look back and Joe Burrow hasn't won a Super Bowl or 2 or 4, which he probably could do if he was on a good team, there will be a lot of finger pointing and blaming to go. So how does this season go, and how do they try and take that step forward? So you got the question of Al Golden. Can he rebuild the Cincinnati defense in some way, even though players like Hendrickson and Stewart don't necessarily want to play? So there's been they've invested heavily on the D-line. They've hired a reasonably big name from the college circuit. The expectation is that the defense will improve. If these coaching changes stick, if Hendrickson decides to actually accept contract deals, if Shemar Stewart actually turns up for camp and they build something, the defense will be better than last year, right? I don't think it can pivot towards that level of respectability if they don't bring in those pieces. Golden has the coaching tools, but the question ultimately, if you don't have a solid pass rush on the field, you don't have a talent like Trey Hendrickson on the field, it doesn't really matter how good your coach is in those kind of situations. So the defense should be better if they solve these player problems, and if that happens, I mean, this is what fans are saying. Like, you go onto Bengals Reddit or whatever, and the fans are saying, we don't want a good defense, we want a mediocre defense, because at least then we have a team worth watching because we know the guys are on the other side. Are there questions on the offensive side? I mean, it's there's a lot of money that's been invested in Chase and Higgins. Is there a window of availability? How big is this window that they have? I would say it's the same as the Bills. Their window is as long as Joe Burrow plays. Now, there is a history of injury there, and maybe we don't know what his longevity is in the long run, but he's bounced back from injuries quite impressively in his NFL career to date. So I will I will accept that the team has the talent on the offensive side to do that. They have their elite production. This team will score points. Will the offensive line protect them? Lucas Patrick, Dylan Fairchild, these are good additions. Maybe not necessarily upgrades, but they replace the players that they're making. It's a middle of the line offensive line, and if Joe Burrow gets sacked 15 times a game, we shouldn't necessarily be surprised that they're doing. So they brought in a new offensive line coach from the Pats, Scott Peters, who's he's technical. He might be able to fix some of the problems going on there. So they have the talent, but the pieces around those talent maybe necessarily aren't what you need them to be. And there's maybe asking for an awful lot from Joe Burrow the way this team is going to go forward. And then the final question, the coaching. Organization has shown to be difficulties. This coaching team, okay, they got them to a Super Bowl, but no one's ever really been convinced that Zach Taylor is the guy. I think he's high up on the kind of the betting markets for first head coach to be sacked. I think that's where we are. There are reports that the front office is wavering, that the big players refusing to sign contracts is a sign that the talented players don't necessarily believe Zach Taylor is the guy to get forward. So there are absolute questions in that regard. And I don't. We've seen that Zach Taylor is occasionally able to spice things up, and they did solve some offensive problems when Joe Burrow got injured last time around. So maybe there's a reason to believe the coaching can step up if needed. But ultimately, if the dominoes fall in place, Al Golden's defense works with the players involved, the O-line finds some level of stability, Burrow stays healthy, the wide receivers stay locked in, the offensive line works, this team can win 12 games, 13 games. This team can make a Super Bowl run like 2021. But the big thing is that's an awful lot of ifs. Awful lot of things have to actually work in order for that to succeed. But the margin for error is razor thin. If the contract holdouts don't play, the defense won't work. If Zach Taylor continues to do things ridiculously conservatively, like punting on fourth down all the time, or not playing the 2-minute drill properly, they're going to lose a playoff game. They're going to lose a divisional round game against somebody, and it's another lost season. And if the offensive line changes don't make this team a little bit better, they've got problems there. I want to believe, because I believe that Joe Burrow is the most of all the QB talents to watch. He's the one I enjoy watching the most because he reminds me of Joe Montana. He reminds me of my childhood when Montana was the guy. But is the rest of the team able to hold on to Joe Burrow's coattails? And I want to believe yes, but I totally understand people who say, "Are you kidding yourself? This team has never proven themselves capable of doing that except that one year."
Yeah, it's the same old Bengals, right? Like, they've always been a interesting organization. Their owner, Mike Brown, has always been quite open that he basically runs the organization himself. He basically didn't have a GM, and it basically took, a head coach coming in and basically running the organization for him to have any success over a decade ago now. And then they managed to look their way into a generational quarterback who basically is doing the Peyton Manning thing from his Colts day, where he's basically, all right, you guys, I'll just run this team for you. And that's basically the role that Joe Burrow finds. I'm not sure if that's what he wanted, but he's going to take the role up if he has to. And so basically Joe Burrow's out there advocating for his guys to get paid. And so his guys get paid, even though Brown is a known skinflint by NFL terms. And so is very unhappy from all the reports we've heard over the years to actually give guaranteed money to people. He obviously famously had that Carson Palmer situation occur 15 years ago, I think, at this point, that ended up being kind of showing what kind of organization this was. And so when you have a weak organization and you have a weak coach, you're just not going to get the same kind of reliability that you get out of the Ravens and the Steelers, their compatriots in the AFC North. But as you say, the talent is there, the upside is there, that they can have that 1 year every, like, say, 2 or 3 years where everything goes right and suddenly they find themselves in the Super Bowl like they did a few years ago. And with Joe Burrow, they have someone who can basically drag the entire organization on his back and make it work. The defense change, I'm skeptical of. Al Golan's not really a new defense. It's basically someone who worked for the Bengals organization a few years ago, left in Notre Dame, had a great success running a pro-type scheme in the college level, and has come back. So your assumption there is that hopefully he's learned some additional things for being the main man and being a bit more innovative and being involved in college, where more innovative approaches are perhaps possible than in the crucible of the NFL. And also perhaps he's just a better personality. Like Anarumo was very good, but a bit grumpy old man DC type compared to Al Golden, who maybe a bit more dynamic, modern, if you want to put that. Basically not quite that the stereotype you have of a DC, basically an old crotchety old man. And then, it would be better to get off on the right foot with your star player in Trey Hendrickson, who apparently latest reported he now is talking to the team again. So we'll see how that works out. I think given the way NFL economics works for players, they probably will come to some kind of agreement and he will play for them this year. But if he's missing time, then he mightn't be at his best. And then obviously Shemar Stewart, they're basically getting into the weeds of the contract language, but basically they want to change it slightly from what they did previously, where I believe if there's a void in the contract, say due to him doing something questionable legally or a suspension or something like that, that it would void not just the year where he did the thing, but also all future years. And Shemar Stewart is basically going, no. And then he's also got the pressure of basically not wanting to agree to something that will then create issues with his fellow people in the locker room, because he'll basically have been the headliner for something that makes the players' terms and conditions worse for forever, basically, for this team. I think there is actually reports that some teams already do this, but it's harder to be in one position and then move it back in terms of the quality of contract enjoyed by players, especially rookies who are so constrained in so many ways in terms of what they're offered. So it's been a weird, bad off season in the sense that they had the positive thing, like the actual sustainability of you have an elite franchise quarterback. Let's just give him 2 elite wide receivers and just hope the offensive line just works, is questionable, and the opposite of what many of the best teams have done over the years, where they did the opposite. They kind of built the trenches, the offensive line, and then give adequate wide receiver options. So we'll see how that works out. But with Joe Burrow, it can't get that bad unless he gets injured, of course, which he's done several times. But the defense, it just feels like that the entire thing with Trey Hendrickson and the Shemar Stewart thing just brings back that stink of same old bungles that is hard to get rid of. But as you say, if everything works out and they start winning games, and if they don't have a slow start to the season, which they're notorious for doing the last couple of seasons, if just come out of the gate and win even 500 instead of like 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5, then I think the fans will forget and everyone will get on. Will be all happy days from there on out. But the foundations of this team are nowhere near as solid as their compatriots. So if everything goes right, yeah, they got the upside. But I'm not willing to bet on that actually happening, because the NFL is a dangerous and violent place. And yeah, it's just as likely Joe Burrow is like out for another season by week 5 as they are to be in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, like this is the thing. It's just there's no stability in this leadership. There's no leadership from this leadership. Like Leo Anarumo was fired, and broadly it was just because they needed a sacrificial head, and the head coach didn't want it to be him. So Leo Anarumo got the chop. Al Golden, like you say, relatively not a world of difference coming in there, but I think the head coach is feeling the heat, and then like you were talking about there, this Shemar Stewart stuff, like for me it's the penny pinching Browns or Bengals crap all over again. Like it's just they want to stick in this clause in the contract that hasn't been in their previous first round rookies contracts, and they're putting this young fella in a spot where he's going to get it in the neck. Like we're in an era where these contracts are essentially all agreed in advance anyway. Like they're very, very strict guardrails put on them. So like you're having this guy sit out for absolutely no reason, and this is where you should see your head coach step in and do something, right? This is where we need to see Zach Taylor stand up to ownership and say, look, I need these players on the pitch now. Like, cop yourselves on. Strong coaches do that all the time, but obviously Zach Taylor is afraid of the ownership here. He knows that he's already in the bad books, like you say, Sean. He's likely to be there. He's the bookie's favorite to be gone, so he doesn't want to step out of line. But like, it shouldn't have to be this rookie dealing with this crap. Like the head coach should be stepping in there and having a chat. Ronan's already touched a little bit what I was going to say about this wide receiver thing, where it's nice to have, but it's also like I think it's excessive. They are just hoping that the offense will be able to drag them all the way there, Sean. You're dead right. I don't think it will be able to. I think they're another year older. I think we've seen that Joe Burrow, as good as he is, has had injuries in the past. I don't like this offensive line in the slightest. I don't think it's better than it was last year. So I'm not sure I trust them. I still think they'll be fun to watch. I still think they'll be explosive on offense. I just don't think they'll be able to get the job done against the bigger teams. So I think they're going to make the playoffs and then they're going to fizzle out in the playoffs. I don't even see them going that deep in it, to be honest. But I think I have them winning one playoff game. Yeah, I think so. But yeah, I just don't understand it. Like, just Yoshivas was coming on great last year. Just let him be the WR2, save your money, pick up maybe a better running back and maybe bolster that offensive line a little, or invest something in the defense. Like, it's just there's no direction from the coach, so the QB is out there just deciding what he wants to do with the team, and of course he wants all the toys. But like, he's a quarterback, he's an athlete, he's not a team manager, he's not a coach, he doesn't know how to do this. Like, of course, if we could just give him all the things he wants, that'd be perfect. But that's no way to build or manage a team. I think this leadership, this coaching group is careening towards disaster. They could get lucky, it could all work and everyone stays healthy and they could make a decent run of it. But yeah, I just think it's given me an awful lot of like Chargers in the Phillip Rivers era kind of to it. So I think it's a bit of a waste, to be honest. I have them going 10-7, getting the 5th seed and getting knocked out in the divisional round.
Yeah, 9-8 for me, 5th in the AFC, going out the divisional round as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to, just like the Pats last week, I'm going to lead into the romance, and I want to believe. So I'm going to go 12-5 to win the division, 3 seed. But then the way my thing worked out, I had them in the wild card facing the Ravens, and I was like, oh man, they're never going to beat the Ravens in the playoffs. So they get the 3 seed, but then they go out in the wild card.
Solid approach. Next up, we have the Steelers, Ronan, who are playing in Dublin, but we're not going to go see them. 10-7 last year. They lost in the wild card to Baltimore.
Yep, send in the clowns, right? That's the Steelers' way this offseason, it feels like. Like, obviously, the number one thing that you're talking about this offseason is the recent signing of Aaron Rodgers to be the starting quarterback for this team. Aaron Rodgers has been a joke during his Jets tenure. And you just got to hope if you're a Steelers fan that we're going from, the Packers, a very solid, well-run organization, and he was, a little bit questionable there, but it was mostly tamped down by them being a good team and winning. Going to the Jets, one of the joke shop operations in the NFL, turning it into a complete disaster zone, some of his own fault, some of it due to injury, and now going back to a more safe, more Green Bay type environment that he can at least keep things relatively safe. But it's still probably better than the alternative, which was, having Mason Rudolph back in there, quarterback, whose most notable action in the NFL is potentially being a racist and getting his head hit in by Myles Garrett, or Will Howard, a rookie, being thrown in there from the middle round. So, I get why I went for Rodgers after losing out in Justin Fields, but it's still not a good outcome, right? And then they decide, okay, this George Pickens guy, he's a bit of a character. He's just not playing right. He's not fit for the Steelers way. So we'll trade him away and we'll bring in DK Metcalf, noted character guy, noted guy who doesn't pout and make trouble on the sideline when things aren't going his way. That'll work. And then it's like, what will we put around him? Nothing. Great. Okay, well, maybe Robin Wilson will step up, or, some other random, Robert Woods still has some juice in him, right? About 3 or 4 years since the last time he played. Like, Calvin Austin is like a good wide receiver 3-4 option, but asking him to probably be your wide receiver 2, not great, to be honest. And so, they lose Najee Harris, and so they go out, well, what if we got the most boring running back from this year's class? And they went, Kaleb Johnson. This guy, he ran through really big holes at the college level, kind of slow. Perfect. We'll put him in there running back, so we don't have to see Jaylen Warren, who is far too exciting to be put in on a full-time basis. He's probably very fragile or something like that. So we'll just stick with this Kaleb Johnson, so we can just recreate the Najee Harris 4-yard experience at a time, 3 to 4 yard experience at a time. Perfect. This is Steelers football right here. Get excited, people. And, on the defense, they bring in Darius Slay, and they bring in some other options like Juan Thornhill and Derek Harmon. A rookie is brought in to hopefully eventually replace Cam Hayward, probably, maybe. And you just kind of go, okay, this is the Steelers. So they're going to have either 9 wins or 10 wins. But this feels like a bad year, so I'm giving them 9 wins. Spoiler alert. And everyone else, I think you guys have finally gone on the program. You've just gone, okay, Ronan just right every year. We're not giving him free prediction points this year. So I think we're all going to end up roughly in the same place here. But anyway, and let's be honest, last year went better than expected, despite the fact that Russell Wilson is kind of washed and Justin Fields is kind of bad at doing actual quarterback things. But I think at least those guys are dynamic. They offer something exciting. Russell Wilson can still do a nice deep ball, and George Pickens was very good at taking advantage of those. Justin Fields was still okay with running the ball, even though they were kind of reticent to do so. Whereas Aaron Rodgers, we don't know if he has anything left in the tank. Last year, albeit in a really bad situation, he looked very, very flighty. Basically, if there was a micro pressure, a Newton of net pressure on him, he just basically immediately got rid of the ball, and it basically turned the offense into a very static, very predictable offense. The hope here is that with an offensive line that I think has actually grown into being a decent unit, for years it was actually a problem, but they have Zach Frazier, who looked like possibly the best offensive lineman picked in last year's draft, and they have Fanat Foutanu and Broderick Jones, who both look like solid, young tackle prospects, and Samuelu's a veteran guard, and McCormick will see if he can develop at the other guard position. So they could have a solid offensive line, and that means they should be able to run the ball effectively enough. And if that's there, then at least Arthur Smith can't fuck it up completely, right? He asked somewhat reticently. And that's just then Aaron Rodgers can just do enough, right? He's just put in the complementary position. And in the best case scenario, it might be like the early tenure of Aaron Rodgers under Matt LaFleur, where basically it's okay, Aaron, I got that you have gotten used to running your offense and doing stuff, but basically this is what we're actually going to do. You become more of a complementary piece, just run the system. And if Aaron Rodgers is genuinely serious about trying to go on at least somewhat of a high note, actually getting to the playoffs, then hopefully he will be humble enough. That seems like a really big assumption, but hopefully he's humble enough to just listen and take in. And I don't think Arthur Smith's a good OC, but if he's just going to run the ball and do effective stuff, it won't be any worse than it was last year. And on the defense, I don't expect it to fall off a cliff, but there is concerns here that the elite players here are getting older. TJ Watt is in a contract dispute. I'm sure they'll sort that out before the season starts, and he'll probably, even if he misses a bit of camp, he'll probably still be TJ Watt, so that's fine. And Alex Highsmith's probably one of the best second pass rushers in the league. He's young enough, so that's okay. But they're still relying on Cam Hayward, who's getting into his mid-30s now, to be a high performer, to kind of be the anchor of the interior defensive line. They're obviously hoping Derek Harmon as a rookie can step in and do something, but we know the Steelers are notoriously a team that brings players across a little slower than maybe some organizations do these days. Keanu Benton had high hopes coming in. I think it's a second or third rounder last year. Didn't really live up to those. So you're still really relying on Cam Hayward being good. And the rest of this defense is fine. Like Patrick Queen, I think still overrated. Probably doesn't play as well as his contract would suggest. I think in the defense, in the secondary, Deshaun Elliott's very fill-in. Safety should be fine. Minka Fitzpatrick obviously came into Steelers, had a really good start to his Steelers career after being traded from Miami, but has fallen off a little bit. But if he get back to his best, he can definitely be a ball hawk, make a lot of big plays if he's willing to go all in. Joey Porter Jr. has lived up to his father's reputation and is a nice, spicy man corner who definitely gets up in people's faces. Darius Slay, hopefully still has juice left in his legs. He did look good for the Eagles last year, so hopefully the cliff won't come from this year and he'll continue to be an efficient performer for there. And so you just go with this. It's like, it's fine. It's the Steelers. And as long as Aaron Rodgers doesn't turn this into a complete joke show, shit show, literally has nothing left in the arm, nothing left in the tank, and they're throwing Mason Rudolph in there, and even Mason Rudolph, they'll probably still win like 8 games. They're going to be the same old Steelers. But do you see, like last year, at least with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, I kind of went, like, at least if I squint, I could see a version of this, especially with Justin Fields, that if he developed and this good organization could turn him around, they had the upside to potentially do more than just, you know, either just out missing the playoffs or get out in the wild card. But with Aaron Rodgers, it just feels inevitable that this is a wild card team going out. So the same old nonsense. And just with Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf, there might be more annoying clips to worry about on the sideline. But does it make any difference to the Tomlin 98 forever scheme? Probably not.
Yeah, I talked about this last week. I just don't believe in Aaron Rodgers anymore. I think the ego stuff and the toxicity stuff is getting worse as he ages, and I think his talent is noticeably bleeding away. One of the things I remember noticing when we watched the Jets in London last year was he was trying to run a timing-based scheme on players who weren't quite in the same wavelength as him, and getting mad at the players for not being able to do the things that he wanted to do, even though his passing was not quite at the level of accuracy that it was. And I think that those are the two.
And he also skipped like a whole bunch of camp, didn't he, to go to Egypt during the offseason? So whose fault was it really, Aaron?
But I mean, I think it points to the two big problems, which is one, he's aging and his talent is he's not quite as good as he used to be, and he hasn't realized that yet. Or maybe the hope for the Steelers is that he's humble enough to get that. And B, he doesn't have the patience to actually work with the players that are around him. I can just see a scenario where Rodgers starts to get pissed off at everybody and decides he's just only going to throw to DK Metcalf because he's the only guy he actually would trust as a player. And I don't think that's going to work for the Steelers. I think that ends up in being a very one-dimensional offense. I don't buy that this guy is going to somehow be shaped by the Steelers organization or by Tomlin as a good coach, or they're going to be able to constrain him in some way. I think he's too old for all of that shit, and I think he's a bad fit for this organization. And I also, the thing that they have not learned from the Jets debacle, there's no backup plan, right? Mason Rudolph is not a backup plan. If this team does not work offensively, then you have, as Ronan says, you're just going to have to turn this into a 100% running team. And they don't necessarily even have the talent there, building themselves around Jaylen Warren or whatever on the running game. That's not enough to be a playoff team either. So, I mean, I know we live in Tomlin 9-8 world where the Steelers organization plus the coaching guarantees this team has a winning season because they're just the Steelers. But the offense just does not make sense to me as to how this actually is going to work in practice and what happens when things maybe aren't clicking the way that they should. Like the Jets thing was very much a cumulative. It started off quite positive when he came back from the injury last season. Started off quite positively, but once the mistakes started to creep in, they increased exponentially, and so did the vitriol and the infighting and the such like. Rodgers he's at the stage of his life where he needs to find a scapegoat for the fact that he's aging and he hates it. And I don't think this is the right place for him to do that. And the defense, which is the kind of the thing that has been keeping this organization going for the past 5 or 6 years, is that they've got a really good defense. They're aging, as Ronan said, and the advanced stats suggest that the decline is already setting in. I don't speak to know too much about advanced stats, but I understand the pass coverage stats are showing that this team is very much on the way down. So they can't even rely on their defense to help them grind out these 11 or 12-11 or 13-10 wins that the AFC North has been so famous for. I don't think the defense good enough to do that anymore. So you're in the situation of where exactly this team starts to get wins, and you're relying entirely, essentially, on it working, right? That the Rodgers thing works and the defense doesn't decline too much, and the Jaylen Warren thing on the running game works enough, and they found these hidden gems of Calvin Austin or whatever that he steps up to the room. I think there's a lot of ifs, buts, and maybes about the Steelers team, and I think the Rodgers thing is just so toxic enough that I'm going to make the ultimate damning indictment of a Mike Tomlin team, and I'm going to say they're only going to win 8 games this year.
You fool! You fool! 3 points for me in the prediction game.
Yeah, we'll see. Like I don't think the ceiling is massively high on this team. Like I don't see Rodgers regaining form of 3 or 4 years ago and kind of going on one for them. But I also do think that he'll be solid enough. I think Tomlin has shown throughout the years, just look at literally almost every wide receiver that's left the organization, he's good at managing crazy inside the house. Like, now, a lot of those guys are younger in the career. I get what you're saying about Rodgers being set in, but I think it's set into Aaron Rodgers that, like, he doesn't just want to be a guy who shows up on Pat McAfee's podcasts to get clicks. He needs to have a better image if he wants to have, like, media work or anything serious after his career, and that's coming across in the interviews, so I think that will happen. But rather than discuss the actual football, I have a conspiracy theory. So my belief is that Aaron Rodgers is coming to the team because they said, look, we tried all the other options. We had to settle for him. Mason Rudolph isn't an answer, as we know, right? So they go and they get Aaron Rodgers because the Steelers can't quit. They can't just have a down season or give up on a season for a draft pick, but they desperately need one. So they brought in a mercurial quarterback who they can just kind of drive insane and crazy and ensure they do only win 1, 2, 3 games, right? Get a nice high draft pick. And you know who's going to be eligible for the draft this year? Arch Manning. Arch Manning is going to be coming out, and his family have been talking quite a lot about how he might or might not come out depending on who be up there, because they want to, as they have previously with Eli, want to control what kind of Tiffany or well-established franchise that he will go to. So I think the Steelers would fit right into that. So I think possibly this is Aaron Rodgers as part of the deep state trying to tank the Steelers season so that the Mannings can control what team their son goes to.
Connor, it's a totally believable conspiracy theory. The real question then is Rodgers in on it or not?
He is. He thought it was too important. That's why he stepped down from being the vice president in that run with RFK or whatever it was. But I think it's. I think they're going to do fine. I think it's going to be relatively boring. I think some of it will work, some of it won't. I think the long term of this team is more concerning than maybe this season. I think this season will be the same as the last ones. It'll be somewhere between 8 and 10 wins and getting bumped in the playoffs if they make it in at that. But it's aging. I think that they've got a lot of rookies coming into this defense, and they need a few of them to catch on because, like you said, this is an aging defense, and I don't like the depth at running back. I don't like the line is fine. I suppose it's not great. But it's fine. But yeah, it's just kind of slowly ebbing away from them a little bit. And this idea of just the reliable 8 to 9 wins thing, like it's proof positive that it's not something that is sustainable. But it's also just kind of like I'm not sure it's even going to be something that could do that anyway soon. So yeah, 9 and 8. But I have that good for 8th spot in the AFC, so they don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, inevitable for me. 9 and 8. In my case, they do make the playoffs and they go out in the wild card. So I'm pretty confident in that as much as any prediction. My only other confident prediction for this team is Alan Lazard will inevitably on this team at some point during the season.
And as I said, I am 8 and 9. The Thomas streak ends and it's all Aaron Rodgers' fault.
Yeah, but you also know that all they're going to talk about then is like they're just going to swap to say he's never won less than 8 games.
It's true.
Unless did they have like a 8 and 1? No, that would have been So
well, 8 wins used to be 500, right? So
yeah, I think they have 1 or 2 8 and 8 seasons back in the 16 game seasons.
Yeah,
so
I was just trying to remember. Did he ever have any that were a 7-win season? 7, 2, and 7, which I don't think that's happened. Very good. Okay, up next, I've got the Ravens. Ravens coming off a relatively successful season, 12-5 divisional loss against Buffalo. They have added in the rookie Malachi Starks at defensive back, Jajobi Awuzie, Bilal Cohn, another rookie at DB, and Robert Longerbeam, which is a phenomenal surname. So that's a defensive back refresh. Their D-line and linebackers with Mike Green on D-line, John Jenkins on D-line, Aeneas Beebles, Teddy Buchanan. Those are all rookies. They're going to have a lot of young people on this thing. And Jake Hummel at linebacker. On the offensive side, they added Noteboom, Jones, Vincent to the offensive line. DeAndre Hopkins is there alongside LeJontay Wester at wide receiver, and Cooper Rush has joined them as a backup quarterback. He's filling some spots that are made up, so they lost a couple of people on the back end. So Ladarius Washington has an injury, so he's probably gone for the season. Marcus Williams, safety, gone. Brandon Stevens, Trey White, and Arthur Mallett, all defensive backs that are gone. They lost Michael Pierce, Brent Urban from the defensive line, Malik Harrison, Chris Board, and Kirsten Welsh from the linebacker core. And from the offense, they lost Patrick McCarry from the offensive line alongside Josh Jones. They also lost Nelson Aguilar, Deontay Johnson from their wide receiver core, and Josh Jones, the quarterback. So this is a team that has been going pretty well of late. The problem is, again, not too dissimilar from one or two of the teams we've talked about in the last couple of shows. Just haven't quite been able to get there. They kind of fixed some of the problems that were facing them previously. Look, we always said like, oh, a bit of a stronger run game. Sure, Derrick Henry comes in, plugs in, works phenomenally for them. We could probably do with like, some young wide receivers. They pick up Zay Jones in the draft, and he's worked well for them. Mark Andrews, their tight end, is aging, but Isaiah Likely's been playing pretty well behind him. I would say I'd like to see maybe a little bit more of a clear WR1. Zay Flowers is great, don't get me wrong, he's great, but he's not kind of your big prototypical guy that you'd expect. Their line is pretty good, like their run game is pretty good. Offensively, I feel pretty happy about this team for sure, right? My only concern is we are looking at Lamar Jackson being another year older. So probably a little bit slower than he was beforehand, a little bit more wear on the tires. Now he's been similar to Derrick Henry when he was at the Titans. He's been kind of proving this wrong every year and kind of still looking good and still being incredibly hard to tackle. So I think like that, nothing's going to change in that respect. You're going to use a lot of him on the boot, a lot of him in play action. A lot of Lamar just running on designed runs, and it's going to work for them. They're, like I said, maybe could do with a little bit more wide receiver stuff, but I kind of feel like I'm harping on a bit of a trope at that stage, because we say this every year, because the off-season cycle is, oh, Lamar has gotten better at passing, he's more accurate than he ever was before. Lamar has incredible chemistry with these wide receivers, and then he just doesn't throw it that much, or isn't actually all that accurate versus where he was beforehand. So like I think we just accept what it is. He wants to throw inside the numbers, he's fine with the deep ball, and it's mostly the threat of the run and getting people to pull in, and then he can get some space over the middle. That's grand. Derrick Henry, another year older, he still looked great last year. We've been saying for 4 or 5 years he can't keep up this workload. He seems to still be keeping it up. I've decided to just stop saying that I think it's going to be the year. It's not going to happen anymore. Look, Henry will still be fine this year. They've got a good line as well to help him block. I think he did look maybe a half step slower last year, but he kind of kept it going throughout the year. So I think that's absolutely fine. And their defense then is kind of the question. There's a lot of rookies that they're bringing in to this defense, because overall this was a pretty good defense, but it was hot and cold last year. It had a lot of really good games where it completely shut down people, and then it just had games where people went, oh yeah, this is how you deal with it, and they were able to slip past it immediately. I think particularly outside of Roquan Smith, I think the middle could probably do with a bit of help, and they've got a couple of rookies in that kind of like hybrid-y defensive back linebacker setup going on. I think Kyle Van Noy is getting a little bit older. Matabuke is good. Like it's fine, but it feels on defense that they are more I don't want to say fragile is the wrong term, but maybe just a little bit older, a little bit less boomy than they were beforehand. Like it's fine. Like it's not that I kind of go there's a glaring massive hole. Like there's one or two spots that could definitely do with strengthening, but they've got a bunch of rookies and they might find some of those guys slip into those spots, but not not too far away from how I was about the Bills. I'm kind of like it's not that big a change happening here. They are just kind of hoping that the formula that came close beforehand will work again, and trying to phase in and out a couple of pieces for where people were old or injured and or contracts just got too big. I'm just uh, Ravens are solid. I'm they're losing their luster for me at this stage. I'm not feeling it. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing them taking that big step. I'm not seeing them innovating here in a way that's kind of going, well, oh, well, that means that'll be fixed for you. Because unlike the likes of the Bengals, I don't see the Ravens coaching staff as getting spooked in big games, but I kind of see it more as them kind of just capping out at what they can do. And what they can do is electric. What they can do is very fun, but I'm not sure they've pushed over that edge yet. So I'm kind of a mid, kind of like not thumbs up or thumbs down, just kind of like, oh, okay, for the Ravens, which is, sounds negative for a team that I'm going to have kind of going into the playoffs and making some distance in it. But yeah, just I don't feel they've done much to make me think massively different of them.
Yeah, like I think this is a team which this is definitely a quiet off season for them, a bit more like what they were maybe 3 or 4 years ago, when they were transitioning to Lamar onto his second contract. Like I think 2 years ago for me will always still be the big missed opportunity, 2023, when I think they everything except for the like having Derrick Henry was at its best. They had a elite defense with an elite defensive coaching staff, which basically got torn apart at the end of that season. And they basically chose to promote the youngest guy of all the guys that could have had the DC, Zach Orr. And I think there were some growing pains for him, partially because he's young and it's just tough. And I think they brought in a veteran, one of the guys who was there previously, to help him out. But I think also because the defense that had been so successful for the Ravens in 2023 had also now become one of the default defenses that all the offensive minds were thinking, how do we beat this? So just repeating what Mike McDonald had done and the other coaches, Anthony Weaver, etc., had done wasn't enough, with the NFL obviously kind of so aggressively catching up and breaking down any good scheme. And obviously that was a great scheme in 2023. And so the defense did take a step back. And I think in the upcoming year, I think the biggest upside they have is that Zach Orr will have learned a lot in that first year, and that he will have for good reason been promoted to be the DC over some more experienced guys, and that he can then create the next great Ravens defense, which obviously has been the basis of their Super Bowl wins in eras past. They do lose Michael Purse, who's like basically a prototypical nose tackle, kind of a guy who came back to them after a few years away and immediately showed how good he was and why they should never let him go. They brought in John Jenkins, who's kind of a very middling nose tackle option, but they have the big beefy guy around which all of the rest of the defensive line will dance. Like Madubuike, obviously the breakout season a couple of years ago, was still good last year, but didn't show that he deserves to be like the kind of all-pro Aaron Donald type consideration, but he's in that kind of Pro Bowl tier. Like Kyle Van Noy is a very effective weapon in the sense that he can play. He's very flexible, so very suitable for the new schemes where not knowing what the defense is doing is a huge part of that. But is he like a great all-out pass rusher like a TJ Watt or a Myles Garrett? No, he's nowhere near that. And I think there was a lack of pass rush juice for this team. And a lot of the pass rush juice they had in 2023 was based in the scheme. And so you just don't feel like there's guys on this, like Odofowowe is a former first-round pick but never really kicked on, who's just going to like make sacks happen when the scheme doesn't work. And so they're very scheme dependent. Like they have great players who make that scheme work in the back end, like Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton. And Marlon Humphrey's still a good player. Nate Wiggins could make a second year leap. But it doesn't feel like the front is like elite enough that's going to basically destroy teams like Myles Garrett can do single handedly. Although he has to do a lot more work to make that team relevant. We'll talk about that in a second. So yeah, I think the defense will be good, but unless Zach Orr has really taken takes a second year leap, which is unusual to talk about a coach. If he takes a second year leap, it doesn't really feel like they're going to turn into an elite Ravens defense. And the offense is like the same. Like I think it's just like it works too well to go away from what Todd Monken has done there. It's a lot better than what they had under Greg Roman. So yeah, I just don't know how much room there is to grow because it's so good already. They did make a bit of a step back in terms of their offensive line depth. We'll see if that has an effect. But yeah, Derrick Henry's going to have probably 1,000 to 1,500 yards. Lamar Jackson will continue to have a bunch of running yards. He'll still be a very effective passer, but I don't know. I don't think Lamar Jackson at this point is going to turn into like, Joe Montana or something like that. So he's just a really, really great player who has some faults, but the things he's so good at are so good that you can't not help but build around it. So yeah, like I think you agree. Like it basically kind of comes down to, for them and the Bills, these teams that are just being stuck behind the Chiefs for so long, like how much is like a 10%, 20% lottery ticket to win the Super Bowl compared to going all in one of these seasons and trying to get that like 30, 40, 50% chance when you get into the tournament and feel like you can actually like dominate like the Eagles have done, say, over the last couple of years in terms of building their team back up. But the Ravens, that's not their approach to team building. Keep building solid, keep it going, and when you have an elite quarterback like Lamar Jackson in there, you're always going to be right in the hunt, but are you ever going to get over the hump? It's really tough if you're not going to make the kind of all-in moves that this team just are never going to make. Like the closest they did is Derrick Henry, and that's just because running backs are so undervalued, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of love. There's a lot to love about these Ravens team. It's not, Roland's right, it's not the team from 2023, which was at its best just spectacularly good, and had it not been for the fact that Mahomes just would not let them win, would have won a Super Bowl. But they're still immensely talented on the offensive side. I mean, I think they have in skill positions probably the most complete unit between quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight ends. All of those players are good. Even Rashad Bateman is probably the weakest of all of the kind of the front line of those players. He's still a pretty decent player, and Zay Flowers has certainly shown that he can step up. He had his 1,000-yard seasons, and he's ready to make that move up. And Andrews and Likely are probably the strongest tight end 1-2 combo in the league. And they've got on the offensive line they've got enough talent to kind of back that up. And then the defense, we've talked about it. They've got a lot of good players. Kyle Hamilton, really, really good. Van Noy, Madubuike, Humphrey. There's Roquan Smith. There's nothing about this Ravens team that screams weakness. It's very much strong all the way down, and that includes, of course, the coaching, where you've got John Harbaugh and you've got his team, and they've proven themselves to be elite. The Ravens' question, I guess, is can they finish? They've gotten very close. 2 years ago, they got really, really close. But they haven't been able to pull it off. And Lamar Jackson has gotten a bit of a blame of that. He's been the guy who can't win in the playoffs, or the guy who can't win enough. And that's a narrative that's going to hang over this team until they get over the hump. But they are, as Roland said, there's just a lot of teams like this in the AFC, the Bengals and the Bills as well. There's a lot of teams in the AFC who would have won Super Bowls were they not operating in the Pat Mahomes era. Looking at this season, I'm not as optimistic as Connor is that Derrick Henry will continue to somehow stave off the advance of time. I mean, the guy's got to start declining at some point. But what's great about the Ravens is that even if he doesn't have a great season, the Ravens have so many other weapons. Like Lamar is a dual threat. They've got a lot of good passing options, which they didn't have 3 years ago when it was just how many times can Lamar pass to Mark Andrews. They're well past that point. So even if the running game isn't working, they still have many ways to make it work on that side. And the defense, the Zach Orr, you can say he's a little bit unproven, and maybe they're still operating in the shadows of 2 years ago, but they've still got enough pieces there that they can make it work. The real question then, I guess, ultimately is can they do it? Can they actually finally deliver? And it's very hard to, as with the Bills, it's very hard to move the analysis much beyond that. You can talk all you want about the level of talent and how good they are and how much they're improving or disimproving, but they've got to prove it on the field. And until they've done that, they will still hang over them that this is a nearly team. This is a very good team. And I have no reason to think that they won't be competing at the top end of the AFC. They won't have a shot of making the AFC Championship. They don't have a shot of making the Super Bowl. I think they are in contention for all of these things, but it's definitely a put up or shut up moment. They have to start winning AFC Championship games. They have to start getting into Super Bowls and winning them, or else this is going to feel like a project. It's a weirdly advanced version of the Steelers project. It's stalling. It's stalling at a very high level, but it's still a project that is stalling if they don't get over that line.
Yeah. So I have them going 11-6, which is good for third seed, and they make it to the divisional round, but they don't make it out.
11-6, 3 seed, divisional round exit. Same as you, Connor.
Solid.
I have them 11-6 as well, which in this romantic scenario puts them behind the Bengals, so they have to get the 6th seed. But then, as I said, they knocked the Bengals out in the wild card. I also have them beating the Chiefs to go into the AFC Championship, where they lose to the Bills. So a good season, but not a great season.
Very good. Okay, on to everyone's favorite team in the AFC North, the Cleveland Browns. Sean, 3-14 last year, not their strongest.
Now that we've done talking about all the good teams, let's talk about the dumpster fire. Because why have one quarterback when you can have 5 quarterbacks, all equally crap? Well, Joe Flacco is just old, but so the Browns are, I think about the Browns from 4 or 5 years ago during the Baker Mayfield era when the plucky Browns had finally come good and they were a team you rooted for and you want them to win, and they won a playoff game for the first time in a million years, and they almost beat the Chiefs, and you really thought, oh, they're finally coming together. And it's how quickly that thing has unraveled, like how quickly this Browns team has become the most depressing team to think about, the most depressing team to watch, and the only thing that you can enjoy is a schadenfreude. You can enjoy watching them suffer, because now, unlike being the plucky underdog who you wish would succeed, now you want them to suffer. You want them to pay for the Deshaun Watson thing and pay for all eternity, and thankfully they are paying, which is good. So changes at quarterback. They've brought in Joe Flacco. They picked up Shedeur Sanders, which is an interesting one. They've got Kenny Pickett, because why not? And also another rookie, Dylan Gabriel. And Deshaun Watson is still a Cleveland Brown, so they do have 5 quarterbacks, and I don't know how the hell that's going to work going into the season. Offensive line additions, Tevin Jenkins, Cornelius Lucas. Running back at Jenkins, two rookies here, Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson at the tight end, Harold Fannin, rookie, Dante Johnson, wide receiver. On the defensive side, Mason Graham, the rookie, comes in. Also on the D-line, Malik Collins, Joe Tyrion. On linebacker side, Carson Schwezinger, Devin Bush, Jerome Baker, and defensive back Rashawn Jenkins. Players they've lost. Obviously they had to get rid of some of their other quarterbacks that hang around. So DTR is gone. Jameis Winston is gone. They've also lost Nick Chubb, Donta Foreman on the running back side, Eli Moore, wide receiver, and 2 tight ends, Jordan Atkins, Jeff Swaim. Offensive side gone, Jedrick Wilkins, James Hudson, Hakeem Adjini, Jermaine Ifedi, Nick Harris, Michael Dunn, Jaron Christian. On the defensive side, Owusu Koromoa gone, Dalvin Tomlinson, James Houston, Maurice Hurst, John Thurnell, Rodney McLeod. So what's left of this Browns is not a very talented unit at all. On the offensive side, utter garbage. And even the parts that looked occasionally like they might amount to something like Cedric Tillman threatened to briefly last season, never really lived up to standards. So how this offense is going to succeed, particularly in an incredibly tough division that they're in, they have to play 6 games against the Bengals, the Ravens, and the Steelers, and it's hard to see them winning any of them, to be perfectly honest. And then on the defensive side, there's some talent there, but Myles Garrett wants out, and who can blame him, quite frankly. So the questions that are before us is who wins the QB carousel? How many players can one team reasonably hope to actually hold on to in the QB room, and for how long, and who might actually win? I think the current sense is Joe Flacco might start week 1, and then the Gabriel Pickett Sanders thing that they might pick between them. Apparently Shedeur Sanders has finally decided to shut up so he can put up. He's got a bit of praise coming in through minicamp, so things might actually work, and some talk that he might be quite a good match for the Stefanski.
I think we can trust the media on Shedeur Sanders, right?
But it looks like it'll be Joe Flacco to start, and then if he gives us Dragon Joe, that could go on for a while. If not, they will start to experiment with the younger guys. So they've given Garrett the money on the defensive side. Can that revitalize the system? Swartz system, it's aggressive. The Browns have have always been quite an interesting team defensively, although the statistics were quite bad last year. They went from being an excellent defense to being quite a middle of the road defense. So there are weaknesses there that certainly aren't. Garrett gives them everything that they want, but they're really going to need more from like the secondary and from other units to step up. So they don't quite have the thing that they had, say, 2 or 3 years ago, which was the defense will hold them in games, and then the offense will occasionally just do enough to win. They don't even have that anymore. They have quite a bad defense and an offense that doesn't quite know what it is yet. And then finally, the final question is how long is Stefanski going to stick around for, and how long is he going to survive? I mean, this is a guy with a good reputation. People did think for a long time that he was potentially the guy, but that shine has gone off him a little bit, and now he's kind of been tainted by the mess that's happened. The roster is aging. Is he starting to become a problem? A lot of roster turnover. They're going to have to find solutions very quickly. I just don't know. I think much like Zach Taylor, there are questions. Stefanski goes into the season with questions on him. He might become the guy that they blame when this ungodly Hydra QB mess that they've created doesn't work, or when the defense continues to decline. I think he might be the guy who gets billed. The cap situation means they can't really fix this anytime soon. But yeah, a lot of things changing, but I don't necessarily think for the better. And there's no reason to believe this team is actually going anywhere. And quite frankly, they deserve to be stuck in the purgatory they're in for at least the length of Deshaun Watson's contract, if not for a very much longer time than that.
It's pretty bad. Yeah, like how many of these quarterbacks are going to start this year? All of them. That's my prediction. All of them will get started at some point. For some reason, due to injury or bullshit. And I think Stefanski, he's got that dead eye stare, just going like, we could have had something here, and then the fucking owner just had to go and do the stupid thing. It's like, swapping deck chairs in Titanic, except, oh, that's not an iceberg, that's a tropical island, guys. Totally. Like, we could totally go to the island. It's not. And then like the ship has just been sinking for now, 3-4 years. And it's just, until the ship goes under and a new ship is built, this is just going to be a disaster. And yeah, like Joe Flacco will probably start, but like Joe Flacco's last time was fun, but he still threw a lot of interceptions, and the talent around him is worse than it was back then. Like Jerry Jeudy, fair play to you for reviving your career, but Jerry Jeudy does not an offense make, and the Nick Chubb era is already over. Even I know he was injured last year, and you bring in some rookies, and I think they'll be good in fantasy, but in terms of getting a functional offense that can win you games, I don't really see it happening. The offense of line, which used to be a strength of this team, is getting older every year and are nowhere near the heights of their power. And the defense, just Myles Garrett going, okay, if you give me all the money in the world, I suppose I can just be the defensive Joe Thomas until I retire. Fine. How do I sleep at night? With a big pile of cash and many beautiful women, basically, is the Myles Garrett story, which is like not the worst story, but given that this is a guy who could be a generational all-timer. Joe Thomas did get to the Hall of Fame. He'll be in the Hall of Fame, but you would like to win some meaningful games while you're at it, but not for you, Myles Garrett. At least not for at least another year or two, it feels like. And so yeah, it's just sad. And Stefanski, maybe eventually they pull the plug, even though I don't think they'll get a better option than him, the coach, just because they need to do something. And the Deshaun Watson thing, there's like 2 years basically all left on it that they have to deal with it. But yeah, he's just lurking there in the background on IOR, basically reminding you on your depth chart at the end in IOR, oh yeah, that mistake we made, and there's just no way out of it. So yeah, like they could play better. Like they're a team that could probably within anywhere between like 3 wins like they had last year up to like 8 wins, 9 wins at a stretch. But yeah, they're not going anywhere because they made such a huge mistake. And given the mistake was so obvious and was so morally reprehensible, like Sean says, well deserved. But Jamari Trash might fit in well in this team, given their namesake. So good luck to him at least.
Yeah. On reflection, we probably shouldn't have finished on this team. It's going to be terrible. That's all we can really say. It's going to be terrible. That said, it'll be better than it was because we won't have to be watching Deshaun Watson up there. So that's a positive. Joe Flacco starts 3 games. Do we think 3? Then we go to, presumably they're going to go to Gabriel before Sanders.
who knows?
Unless they're just going to try and we'll know early in the season if you start hearing loads of like officially reported stories, stuff coming out of the team that's like, oh, Sanders is beating out Gabriel for the QB2 slot. Then you kind of know what's happening and what's coming. But yeah, I don't hate the overall idea of like, okay, we're going to draft a bunch of linemen, need running back, like we'll get a couple of lottery tickets at quarterback and see what we can find. Like they know that the cupboards are bare and they need to fill it back out, and like they don't have a lot of like quality players here outside of Myles Garrett, but they do have a lot of rookies that they can kind of sift through and see what they can do. Like bear in mind that was essentially what happened with the Houston Texans 3 years ago, was it now at this point, where like they had the largest number of people on rosters. They went through undrafted free agents, and because they'd found the quarterback, it kind of worked for them a bit, and then they found a lot of guys by just testing loads of guys out. Now, motivation wise, do the coaching staff want to do that? Because the coaching staff already know they're kind of out the door unless something crazy happens this year. So probably not. But like, it'll be easier to root for. Like I remember being in the sports bar here in town, watching it, and kind of cheering against the Browns and chatting to Browns fans in there who were just like, yeah, I get it. Like, that yeah, we're bad guys, but then you see people like, Myles Garrett who you like, and you want to go, yeah, like go get him. You see good plays from Nick Chubb at the time. You go, yeah, you want to cheer him on. But at least now you don't have to hide your face if you're going to cheer on a big play from them, I suppose. And that's something. It's a long road back, but it's
some fans may choose the paper bag.
Yeah,
shame.
They were born into it. But yeah, look, it's going to be. Yeah, I don't understand the Myles Garrett thing at all. I just don't know why you just give him a giant buttload of money and keep him. Like there's nothing to keep him here.
There's no other answer, Connor. They have no other plan other than hold on to what they have.
They could have spent that money on something else. They weren't going to get their like 2 first-round picks from him or whatever, but like they would have gotten draft capital. They would have been able to do stuff. It's a bit schizophrenic from the ownership. It's a bit rudderless from the direction, but they're trying to turn over a roster that's, I think, second only to the Saints in terms of like needing turnover, needing cap cleansing, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Oh well. I have a slight improvement, 6-11.
Yeah, 6-11 for me. Probably Myles Garrett will win a game by himself, but yeah. At least when they look at Baker Mayfield now, they can go, well, when we get out of here, like Stefanski and co., at least we could be happy again. Except for Myles Garrett and the Browns fans. They're stuck here forever. 6-11.
Oh, ouch. Jesus, that's bleak. I've decided to give them the most Pyrrhic of victories, 4 wins instead of 3 wins. 15th best team in the AFC.
Very good. So big improvement there. At this rate, they'll be Super Bowl contenders in no time.
In about 20 years.
Never. No time is equal to never, right?
Yeah. So very good. That'll wrap up the AFC North. Very much a division of have and have-nots, we'll say. Any plans for the next couple of weeks, lads? It'll be another week before we have another pod out. So any plans for that?
We've got our friend Mike has a wedding next week, which will be fun. Going up to Galway. Haven't been in Galway since my own wedding, so good to see that the old homestead. Reconnect with college memories and do some drinking by the Sparch, I presume.
Yeah, it'll be good fun. I think we're all going to be up at that, aren't we? Yeah, so it'll be good.
I think so. Yeah.
Very fun. I'm obviously going to that myself. So I'm also going to a stag do this weekend.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Hardcore.
Although it's it's not like us good country folk, it's a posh Dublin type one. So we're going down to Wexford to a jazz festival.
Notions.
Yeah, oceans and oceans. But no, it should be good crack. So heading down to that on Saturday, just a one-dayer, thankfully. So be back up on the Sunday. But yeah, what about yourself, Ronan? Any plans?
Yeah, I'll be up in Galway with you guys unless something happens. So yeah, other than that, probably the kind of post-release stuff. Like I'm involved in kind of trying to sell the thing and talk about how great the release was. But other than
Well,
that,
don't you use a platform right here, Ronan? What kind of statistical software could our listeners use?
Well, if you're interested in designing a clinical trial and getting the appropriate sample size, well, I've got the product for you.
This podcast is brought to you by
Rodin's work. None of us know what it's called. You said it has something to do with semen?
We're soon going to be in Siemens, yeah.
Very good, very good. Well, I suppose that'll wrap us up for this week. And we'll be back with the AFC South next week. So very exciting times. God, kill me now. So it's bye from myself, bye from Ronan, bye from Sean. It's been all 4 quarters. Thanks for listening, and we'll chat to you next week.